Let's have a quick look at Tim Winter's Neighbours. Here he comes. It's always a good idea to know the context of stories that you're looking at. So taking a more general view, this is an Australian story. And so what's relevant about it? Australia, as we know it now, is a former English colony formed after the invasion of the established Aboriginal landowners and eventual formation of one nation with federation in 1901. However, the Aboriginal Australians themselves were not recognised as citizens of that nation until the latter part of the 20th century. While the dominant culture could be described as Anglo-Australian, there are a number of Australians with parents or grandparents originating from Europe, Asia, and other countries, or that have just claimed us as a home. Australian politics, though, often debates the effect of multiculturalism, and there can be a lot of anxiety around the topic, particularly around election time. Now, when we zero in a little bit more on Tim Winton, he's a man writing within an Australian 20th and 21st century cultural context. He appears to write from an Anglo-Australian perspective. His work often centres around a male perspective, but not always. He lives within a society that is heteronormative in attitudes and has gendered roles within society and relationships. He is a professional writer, and his work often validates the working class rural experience. However, he can be a little dismissive of city living. He has often a spiritual aspect to his work, but he does not seem to advocate for organised religion. Now, the course itself asks you to look at textual features and language features. Bit scary, I know. Textual features are described on the SCASA website as the structural components and elements that combine to construct meaning and achieve purpose and are recognisable as characterising particular text types. Language features are the features of language that support meaning. For example, sentence structure, noun group phrases, vocabulary, punctuation, figurative language, framing, and camera angles. Choices in language features and text structures together define a type of text and shape its meaning. These choices vary according to the purpose of a text, its subject matter, audience, and mode or medium of production. Still seems a little bit scary? Well, pretty much simply, it's a lot simpler than it seems. So, essentially, it's the construction aspects of the kind of text you are writing, viewing, or reading. In this case, you'll be looking at the features of short stories. So let's look at, if you had the question, what helps shape meaning in a short story studied in class. You might look at the meaning shaped. In this case, it could be the idea that Anglo-Australian culture will be greatly enriched by multiculturalism. So here are some things you could look at. The polished neighbour, through his representation of his actions as selfless and kind, repairing the hen house without being asked. It could be the emotive language of the narrative shifting from wary to warm as they embrace their neighbours. Or the symbolism of relinquishing the great Australian novel, capital letters, to instead enjoy a meaningful moment, which is the birth and celebration of his son with his neighbours. What would that look like if we were to take one of those in a paragraph? Here it goes. In Neighbours, Winton addresses the converging of different cultures within the microcosm of an Australian suburb. The third-person narrator acts to emphasise the Anglo-Australian couple's shift in attitudes towards their multicultural neighbours, incorporating emotive language that helps shape a positive representation of the effect on the couple of integrating with their more heterogeneous community. Initially, they are described as wary, their alienation emphasised by the description of themselves as feeling like sojourners in a foreign land. Here, Winton constructs an emotional start point centred very firmly within the xenophobic Australian attitudes, ones that distrust difference. He slowly shifts the emotion of his language choices to a more positive representation of multiculturalism. The couple's attitudes change and become more a normalising mix, positive and negative, like flattered, claustrophobic, grateful, peeved. This more nuanced perception of their neighbours is an indicator that relations between the couple representing Anglo-Australia and their European Australian neighbours have normalised and they are now one cohesive community. The shifting of the emotional language throughout the short story slowly shapes the meaning for the audience that familiarity with the other will result in harmony given time. These are the sort of questions you could use this text for. Examine the way a text you have studied offers representations of social groups or events. 2. With close reference to at least one text you have studied, explain how the author has made stylistic and structural choices to evoke a response from the audience. 3. With close reference to one text you have studied, analyse how language choices have been made for a particular purpose. 4. Evaluate your response to at least one text studied this semester has been influenced by your personal, social and cultural context. Remember, if any terms concern you, go look up the syllabus on the SCASA website, which has a glossary at the back. Now, go practice. And remember, hard work makes magic happen.